Just because it hasn't been seen before, it doesn't mean it has to be dismissed or invalidated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about what you were saying, and it seems you raised the point of like creativity is not to push us like away from the truth and like the first principles. It's actually to draw us in and towards and closer. And so I think that was a very unique way to describe that. Only alien language.
Does it look okay
Huh?
on my end?
Yeah. Let me
Okay.
center you. Are you
Yeah, I'll just sit here like this. I should have gotten you water.
oh.
You can't hear me through the earphones, huh?
Huh? No.
Yeah, but there is a setting where you can do that.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
All right,
All
baby.
right.
First episode.
Woohoo.
We're gonna, I don't know, maybe we'll come up with the name in the future. I'll just keep talking and then see what we talk
We
about.
talk about.
So, how do you feel? I mean, it took us a little while for us to set this up. So,
Yeah.
how was that experience for you?
I think at first it felt very like, oh, where do we start?
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to put this all together?
Yeah.
And then when we were researching,
Yeah.
I like wanted to lay down because there's a lot of things to think about, like the audio and the video, and then even the editing part. And then I think it was a quick process though. I know you couldn't sleep at all,
Yeah.
but
Literally could not sleep at all last night. So I like did some research this morning, and then I was like, what should because this happens to me like every 2 weeks, because I would be working on something. I'm like, oh, it's 9 o'clock and I have to sleep right away. But my brain is just like running at a million miles per hour. But the cool thing is, it's when I don't fall asleep, my mind just keeps working on the problem. And so I usually end up solving the problem. But just the next day, I didn't get any sleep.
you used your whole night's sleep.
Yeah, it's like the cost of solving the problem is my sleep.
Sleep.
Yeah. So it's one day. But I felt pretty good.
Oh, okay.
I woke up in the morning, still read my Bible, prayed, and yeah, went to go work out. And so I like looked it up. I like asked ChatGPT. I was like, is it okay if I get no sleep and go work out? Is that bad for me?
What did it diagnose you?
Yeah, and then it said as long as it's like a one-off thing, it's fine. So I'm like, okay, that's good. As long as I don't just do this every day, it's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel pretty good about it. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. I'm glad you got your answers.
Yeah. So I know we kind of talked about reimagining how ministry can look like for both of us. And so maybe, do you want to start the conversation off a little bit?
It's not focusing.
Oh,
Hold on.
oh. Okay.
On how ministry will look like.
Yeah. Just some initial thoughts, maybe.
Initial thoughts. I think this podcast is an interesting idea. I think it's something that I've never seen before.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You've never seen a podcast before?
Or
Wow.
used in the context of ministry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I know you talked about like an online church.
Yeah.
And so
How about like Christian podcasters?
Christian podcasters?
Or like pastors who have podcasts?
I think the only podcast I've really kind of invested myself to listen through multiple episodes is like a dating Christian podcast. But I haven't really seen one where it's used to connect in terms of like ministry. And it's usually just like sermons. So there's like a knowledge aspect, but there's no connection. Yeah. And so I don't know. When you suggested, I was like, I wonder what it could look like. So I think it's a door to open to very different ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking this morning, and because I don't know if I necessarily just, because, okay, I'm like thinking about this idea that I don't like how important the title of pastor is and what that actually even means. And so I'm sure biblically there's some kind of passages around like what that actually means.
Mhm.
And I think for me, I was like, man, I feel like being a pastor is in and of itself a little bit confining for
Mm.
me.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to be Jay.
Mhm.
And there are parts of Jay that really want to serve people and to love
Mhm.
people. And it doesn't
Mhm.
have to necessarily just look within the church or ministry context.
Mm.
So I think that like when we say, hey, like, let's do this for a ministry, I think
Mhm.
we're already boxing ourselves in a little bit.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we should just think of it as, I don't know, maybe like, I think first of all, I want it to be enjoyable. Like, I
Mhm.
don't, like, one of the things that I've been reflecting on is that I don't want to check off boxes anymore. I'm
Mhm.
tired of checking off boxes.
Mhm.
I'm just tired of just doing things just to do things.
Mhm.
That's just exhausting for me,
Mhm.
and I don't want to live like that anymore.
Mhm.
And so I really want to do something that's super like authentic for
Mhm.
me as a person, and so I think it really could take multiple different ways,
Mhm.
and I think that foundationally my goal is to tell others about Christ.
Mhm.
And it might not even be explicitly mentioned at times
Mhm.
because maybe the people that we're talking to maybe don't resonate with the faith as much.
Mhm.
So it might not even look like that. And so,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things that Michael and I are doing,
Mhm.
is just exploring these different ideas and spaces rather
Mhm.
than limiting ourselves, or not limiting ourselves, but not being so quick to set boundaries, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And trying to define things. And one of the things that I realized for me is that I like to define things really quickly. I
Mhm.
think with like like trying to preach all the time and you're gonna
Mhm.
preach quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that sounds bad,
Mhm.
but like I always have to get all of this data and I have to like principleize it,
Synthesize it.
synthesize it, and then
Yeah.
deliver it. And I'm so used to doing that that maybe it might go against. It might be
Mm.
counterproductive. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where my mind space is at. There's a
Mhm.
couple more things, but yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I think you raise really good points. I know last Bible study too, we were talking about Philippians chapter 3. Like Paul even was saying, it's like, I think the path you're taking us is biblically founded, and how Paul was saying, like, leave your old self, leave the past behind, and then not letting your experiences be the law. And so, like you're saying, this box, this like formality of how things should be done is essentially just the system we're used to. But that shouldn't stop like new ideas, new systems. And like you're saying, like even the thing that we call ministry, like, does it always have to look that way? And then I think what you're leading us and like opening up is this path to like authenticity. And I don't think that's really much talked about. It's very like conform, do what's always been done.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a very refreshing like tool and space. And then that comes to the roots of why do we do Bible study? Why do we have fellowship? It's to have these open spaces to talk about who you are, who like your authentic self. And then if you get to that, then it's essentially what we're doing here. And so,
Yeah, I
what do you
love
think?
that. I mean, if you just think about like religion, and I think our faith
Mm-hmm.
is more than a religion, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, there are aspects of it where it seems immutable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, the word of God, that's not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And how it looks like today lived out can look
Mm-hmm.
very differently. And I think even if we even say the word ministry,
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
certain images that come up with maybe a preacher and a
Mm-hmm.
band. And I've always questioned it.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it have to be that way?
Yeah.
I don't think it ever says in the Bible, and maybe as we talk, we can discover this further.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's ever place in the Bible where it says, okay, you have to start with a band
Yeah.
with worship music,
Mhm.
and then you have to have one preacher,
Mhm.
and then you have prayer at the end, and then
Mhm.
you have offering at the end, and you go back home.
Mhm.
I just don't I've had this idea that I don't know if that is actually the best way for
Mhm.
discipleship and for people
Mhm.
to grow in their faith and walk. I think it could
Yep.
look drastically different. And and at the same time, I think it's important though
Mhm.
for us to have gone through that journey
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
going through what has been done,
Yeah.
because I think knowing and experiencing what has been done allows us to maybe iterate or build upon and even question, because
Mhm.
we understand it more fully than if we have
Mhm.
not gone through it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like, I don't think there's more one thing that's right or wrong. I think it's just there's been a lot of experiences and teachings on this like systematic, like what's been done past couple years. But there are definitely going to be people who think like you, or like the question of why do we do this? But instead of saying like it's just what's always been done, it's having the time and means to explore it. Like you're not like forcing people to believe that what you're saying is the best and only answer. You're just trying to have a conversation and
Yeah.
allow people who think the same way, especially like me too, of answering the question together. And I think that in of itself is a very like treasure and precious like journey.
Yeah. I There are people like this, right?
Hmm.
And I'm sure there are people like this in church
Yeah, almost
where,
definitely.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
dude, why do we
Why do we do
why do
this
we
every
do
week?
this, right? I think when people, it's like their first couple of times, they don't
Hmm.
think that.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
as they go through this like journey of their
Hmm.
faith and church, they're gonna start questioning, like,
Yeah.
why do
Yeah.
why do we do this,
Yeah.
right? Especially when it comes to like things like, I think there are better ways to do
Hmm.
this, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know if this is the exact like concrete model that
Hmm.
I want to do, but one of the things that I see is, I don't know his name. He's a Korean gangster. Told you about him.
Uh-huh.
He was a pre. He was a gangster before, but I think he's given his life to Christ, and he
Hmm.
is online and basically tells other people about Jesus, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think he had this website or something where people come and join. It's like small groups and Bible
Hmm.
studies. And I think that that really could be a form of ministry
Hmm.
that I think is powerful. And
Hmm.
especially because I teach in a virtual space,
Hmm.
and one of my jobs, because I'm a math teacher in an online space, I want to build community
Hmm.
among my students, and doing that remotely, right?
Hmm.
And I think even though the COVID has ended, I
Hmm.
think there's still a space for that. I mean, I don't
Hmm.
really know what it looks like,
Hmm.
but what I'm trying to say is that there are people like this guy,
Yeah.
right? Where like, hey, it doesn't have to look
Hmm.
traditionally,
Hmm.
and probably there's a good chance that he is doing more work. And I don't know if we can always
Hmm.
validate or judge this way.
Hmm. Hmm.
And at the same time, there is a chance where he is more effective and more powerful in delivering, preaching, and God's
Hmm.
message to the world
Hmm.
through his medium and the way that he does it, rather than perhaps some churches,
Hmm.
right? And that doesn't mean that all churches need to follow this.
Yeah.
It's just that the question of, does it have to be this way,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, yeah, I think that's a very great question to ask. Like, does it have to be this way? And like the question of why. I know you asked that a lot in
Yeah.
our
Oh my gosh.
relationship too.
Oh
And that
goodness.
it's caused me to grow in that aspect. And like while you were sharing, I was even thinking it doesn't even really apply just to ministry. It's not just a new idea. I feel like essentially we have been doing this for a long time. There's nothing radical about asking the question why, because that's what's led us to be this like civilized and modern. Like if no one asked why, then we'd still be like pulling weeds out of the ground. It's like somebody asked, why do we have to do this with our hands? Why can't we use a tool? And then they made something. And like, why do we have to walk? Can't we ride a vehicle? And they make a vehicle. And so I think in the church context, it's always seemed as like, or not given a good positive note of like, this is new, this is uncharted territory, like it has to be the same. But if you look at it in other aspects of life, it's what's led like humans to get this far. And so why can it not be applied to church?
Yeah.
Like, why can it not be?
So I think that that's a very interesting like thought, right? Is like the world, it seems to operate on this innovative and asking of why and this creativity, right? And why can't that be applied to the church? And I think there might be people who might come to you and say, hey, like that's really worldly, right? Our like a church shouldn't follow the world, right? A church should look very different from trying to innovate and trying to be creative. And that's a question that I think I ask myself kind of because I think one of the things that I heard was that ministers or pastors or 사역자s, their job is not to create things. Their job is just to share things. It's just to share the things that's already been, I guess, written or created, which is the gospel. And we're not going to add anything to it in terms of its truth. Now we can maybe discover more of the truth, and get a deeper understanding of the truth, but we're not going to create more truth. And so I think now that's where I think we can say, no, we can be creative about the ways in which the method that it is done, right? All right, let me go turn on the light real quick.
Oh, ew.
Yeah.
It is bright.
So I think there is creativity where like we have the goal, which is to make disciples, to preach the gospel, and the way that that is done. So we don't have to create anything new in terms of the truth and what the Bible is saying, but the way that it is delivered and the way that it is sown into people's lives, that can look very drastically differently.
Yes.
And I think that one of the things that we have to get clear on is not that like our goal is not to have some external validation, right? Like our goal is not to get more views. Our goal is not to get more status,
Prove our point.
Yeah, like or more money. It's none of the. At least I'm sure there's some temptation with that stuff, but at least what we are saying and what we're striving after isn't those things. And so I think perhaps the world innovates and creates. I guess not all the time, not all the time, and I think that they like worldly values may go towards status, power, whatever. And I think for us, it's none of those things. It's like we create and we use our creativity, we use our innovation, we use our first principles thinking, starting from scratch, knowing what is absolutely true and building up new solutions from there. Like that is like that's I think God has given us that gift, and I think we need to utilize it. And I want to bring this up, but I don't know how much time we're gonna have with this one. Maybe this could be a next episode. But serving at a Korean immigrant church is a whole different topic. I'm gonna watch out what I say here.
Tea will be spilled.
Yeah, and so okay, maybe we won't go in there because I think that is what made me come to this point, right? And I felt, and not that like it was intentionally done that way. I just felt that like I wanted space to be creative. It's almost like drawing art, you know, those artists that like Christian artists, like they draw like cool things, or Christian musical artists, like they're using their creativity to do kingdom work. And why can't I do that? It's just not with music, but with other aspects of our faith.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Like just because it hasn't been seen before, it doesn't mean it has to be dismissed or invalidated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about what you were saying, and it seems you raised the point of like creativity is not to push us like away from the truth and like the first principles. It's actually to draw us in and towards and closer. And so I think that was a very unique way to describe that. Because
Yeah.
creativity, well, at least for me, I thought of it as you go further and further away for development, but it gets kind of distorted and further away from what the original thing was. But the way you're saying is it's like it's to bring us back to the roots, the purpose, the principles.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that also come into mind as we're talking about like rethinking this space, and we don't have to do it just because it's been done, is, I mean, well, I guess kind of like for me, sometimes there's a space for preaching.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've been discovering a lot is just how powerful one-on-ones are with people.
Mm.
And I mean, sometimes I really do feel like I spend so much time on preaching,
Mm-hmm.
which it has its power too. And sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I could just do away with preaching. I know that sounds so
Mm-hmm.
horrible. And I could just sit down with people one on one,
Mm-hmm.
walk with them, eat with
Mm-hmm.
them, see how they're doing, pray
Mm-hmm.
with them. And that's honestly what I want to do,
Yeah.
And yeah, we can incorporate the Bible teaching here and there, but there's already so much teaching out
Mm.
there. Like, if you truly wanted to get teaching, you don't need it to get it from me. Like, you
Mm.
don't need to get it. Like, yes, I think our preaching is going to be more contextualized and with
Mm.
to the specific needs of the people,
Mm.
which I get, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
really important. But I think for me, the amount of time that I spend preaching,
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, I want it to look differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just something that I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
about.
Yeah. You definitely, at least from what I've witnessed, like the past couple weeks, you look more alive talking about like your experiences with your like one-on-one with your like close friends and family more than like, oh, this is what I've experienced from preaching. I think I do hear a lot of positive feedback, and like your face and like your countenance is also a lot more like alive and happy.
That's
And
good.
so,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I think it's validated in what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I really enjoy preaching,
Mm.
and I've preached for the last 4 years.
Mhm.
And I really do question just how effective it was in people's lives.
Mm.
And people have come up to me and they said, it's been really
Mhm.
good. And I think it could be good, but I just want a space to do other ways of sewing into people's lives
Mhm.
other than the medium of preaching.
Mhm.
And I think just this idea of like a pastor is supposed to preach every Sunday, the same
Mhm.
pastor preaching every
Mhm.
Sunday, doesn't matter. Like, that to me, it's just exhausting
Yeah.
and it's just so draining to even think about. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think this is enough. It's enough for today. I feel like it's gonna be like a therapy
I
session.
know.
Like, it's so much, like, as I'm even talking about this, I'm like, there's so much there that I don't know. Oh my gosh.
That we didn't know we needed to talk through.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, that's such a valuable time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, any other last thoughts before we end?
For me, I just want to thank you for like giving the time and intentionality to make a space like this. It's actually really fun.
Yeah, it
And
is,
like you
right?
say, it's like it feels therapeutic
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
Because at first I was like, what are we gonna talk about?
Yeah.
And it's kind of awkward like sitting and facing
Yeah.
each other in a
Yeah.
very like
Yeah.
talking about deep questions. And
Yeah.
so thank you for like throwing this idea and then making
Yeah.
it happen.
Of course, I'm pretty
Yeah.
amazing. I'm just kidding.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, no, thank you.
Mhm.
It is Yeah, it is so nice,
Mm.
right? I mean, we have a lot of these conversations anyways.
Yeah.
Like we just talk about ministry all the time,
Mhm.
going back and forth and be like, hey, this is what's happening, you know.
Mhm.
We have so many different ideas and we talk about it and it just feels like a little bit like that, those
Mhm.
kinds of conversations.
Mhm.
I think well, there's like the camera recording and all
Yeah.
that stuff, but other than that, it really, and then I have to kind of watch what I say sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh shoot, I don't know if I should say that right now. Maybe in the future episodes.
Anonymous
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. So yeah. So that's
Mm.
good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that would be the end of our first pilot,
Pilot episode.
episode 0.
Yes.
All right, everyone. Thank you for watching.